This episode is brought to you by Google Gemini. With the Gemini app, you can talk live and have a real-time conversation with an AI assistant. It's great for all kinds of things, like if you want to practice for an upcoming interview, ask for advice on things to do in a new city, or brainstorm creative ideas. And by the way, this script was actually read by Gemini. Download the Gemini app for iOS and Android today. Must be 18 plus to use Gemini Live.
This episode is brought to you by Disney's Mufasa, The Lion King. Get tickets now for the ultimate family holiday movie experience. Reunite with the characters you know and the untold story you'd never expect. Witness Mufasa's rise from orphan to king and see how the legendary villain Scar got his name. Disney's Mufasa, The Lion King, in theaters everywhere this Friday. The kingdom awaits.
Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast here to tell you about Michelob Ultra Courtside. It's getting fans closer to the NBA with a chance to win prizes like courtside seats, a trip to All-Star Weekend, and much more. Check it out at MichelobUltra.com/courtside. Michelob Ultra Superior Access, Courtside 24-25 sweepstakes, no purchase necessary. Open to U.S. residents 21 and up. Begins on October 1st, 2024. Ends July 1st, 2025. Multiple entry periods. Visit MichelobUltra.com/courtside for free entry deadlines, and official rules. Message and data rates may apply. Void where prohibited.
Welcome to
4Kids Flashback. Hello and welcome to 4Kids Flashback. My name is Tara Sands. I am a co-host joined by...
another co-host, Steve Yurko.
Yeah. What's up, Steve?
You know.
Steve is deep in prep for a convention, which I wanted to ask him about because I know what goes into the actors' prep for a convention, but I don't know all that goes into, and I know so many of you listening are convention goers. Like, what does prep for on your side look like for an artist?
Well, what is your prep?
Honestly, I don't have to have a beautiful looking table. I just have to pack all the stuff that goes on my table. I just pack up my prints, my Funko Pops, if I'm bringing them. For certain shows, I do a Pokemon trivia contest, so I make sure I have those notes with me. But it's basically the same suitcase for every show.
Yeah.
It's pretty much good to go. I always have to check to see if I have to order more. It's checking inventory, basically.
For me, depends on the show, but it's, if I'm making new stuff, there's a cutoff date that I have to order things by so that I have them in hand. Unless I'm shipping them to the location I'm going to, which I don't often do unless it's I'm staying somewhere residential. I just don't trust I don't trust hotels, or I guess hotels will hold your stuff, but it's a lot of things. And I think more full-time artist alley artist will at this point treat it like a small business where they have at least a helper or two, I guess, so they're able to divvy out responsibilities, including baggage, luggage. I don't, so I have to try and fit everything into a couple suitcases. This is a new record for me. Traveling with 3 suitcases for this trip.
Whoa! Wait, so your stuff that you sell consists of prints, prints and stickers and acrylics, right?
Yes.
So explain what that is, because at first I was like, what is he talking about? But then now I know. But
yeah, they're really popping off now. They're just clear plastic accessories, but they're used in so many different ways. Like keychains were popular acrylics, but now standees are becoming a big thing, and that's kind of just the way at least I make them. Some people design them where it's just it's just a artwork of a character and you just put in a little base, and it's stuff you put on your desk. I go for more of a diorama kind of approach to them. So
what does that mean?
I like to make more of create an image, or I don't know. I always think of
when you say diorama, I want to grab a shoebox and read a book and do a second grade book report. That's exactly where it comes from.
I used to love making dioramas.
Oh, I love a good diorama.
And I think half of it was because I had a lot of toys, so I was just I could recreate that, no problem. I love those. Well, then again, in school, any chance I had to do artwork instead of like anything written or anything like that.
Totally.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Easiest A I could ever get. But I think I'm just like tapping into a lot of that. But I think it's just like, oh, I want to like, you know, I like just make something that looks interesting. And, you know, I try to push a lot of, like a lot of foreshadowing, and a lot of people describe them as dynamic, and they say like, oh, like, you know, it's really interesting with the space you use to like.
You're saying the artwork is foreshadowing something that's coming up in the storyline? Is that what you mean?
Foreshortening, not foreshadowing.
Oh,
Did I say foreshadowing?
Okay. So that was just either you said it wrong or I heard it wrong, but either way, shortening. Okay.
Which is like kind
I was like, oh, foreshadowing. How deep.
You know? Like this hand looks, you know, I'm holding my hand up to the camera, and it obviously looks huge because I'm holding it closer to the POV.
Is that forced perspective?
Yeah,
is that...
yeah, stuff like that.
Okay. I just said that. I felt fancy saying that.
And everything.
What's your best seller?
The acrylic standees now are pretty good.
Of which characters or shows?
I don't know. I just like everyone just knows me as a One Piece guy, so I just like always. It's always money in the One Piece banana stand, I guess. So I just have to.
I was hoping to lead you there because of our guest today, because now you've mentioned One Piece. Yeah. So David Moo will be our guest today. Of course, he was on One Piece at 4Kids, but he also did a lot of other stuff there. He started like a lot of our other guests doing stuff for like Central Park Media, so we'll ask him about that. And I know Steve has some One Piece questions.
I always do.
You always do. And I am not as savvy about the One Piece. But I do. How often do you call it the One Piece, and how often do you call it One Piece?
Tara, it's about to get more confusing because now they're making a second anime.
I know.
Through a different animation studio that's meant to be a more abridged version of the story. Totally in an attempt to get to attract new fans and get new eyes on it without the daunting episode
of thousands and thousands of hours.
And it's called The One Piece.
Oh, that one is called that. That's interesting.
So
that I hadn't heard.
You're gonna have an anime called One Piece, which has as we've talked about, multiple English dubs at this point now. You'll have the live action One Piece. There's
the only one that I've seen. Yes, that is what I've seen. Okay.
I should mention first and foremost the One Piece manga, but now we're gonna have the One Piece, which is a separate anime series, and I don't know how long it's supposed to go for, but
and the regular One Piece that like 4Kids did. Am I right in saying there's 3 different versions of that? There's early episodes dubbed by 4Kids and Ocean, and then there's. No. There's no Ocean dub of One Piece? Did I make that up?
There is I think, Odex dub, which was overseas one, I think, maybe Singapore, was the...
I knew there was some other version that wasn't the 4Kids version. Okay.
No, and that's a very... You got to be like an old One Piece head at this point to still like be aware of that. It's like... That's a very forgotten piece of One Piece media. But yeah, there was that dub. So that's why sometimes you'll see people credited and be like, wait, who is this person? They neither worked with 4Kids or Funimation or Crunchyroll. Yeah, that dub, 4Kids dub, and of course the Funimation Crunchyroll dub. That's
okay. So on a scale of 1 to 45. Sorry, no, a scale of 1 to
a small scale. Yeah.
A scale of 1 to 53. How excited are you for this The One Piece new anime?
What's half of 53? So like 27? I'll say I'm very in the middle about it because I like the actual, the original series, of course. I think there's potential, but I always think anytime they do these remakes, especially ones that are meant to just be more trimming the fat, as they say, I think a lot of them really miss those moments of emotional build-up, or just really setting a mood, setting a tone, or something like that, building up towards something. When there's just a constant flow of getting everything like as quick as possible, and by that I kind of just mean like fights and resolutions to conflicts and all that.
Right, and you're not really the target demo for this version.
Probably
really
not. No, because I
yeah.
think they intend on this appealing to a younger audience, or maybe people that don't want, like I said, don't want to commit to thousands of
invest
episodes.
that kind of time.
But they'll commit to less than 100 episodes. So
when do they anticipate air? Like, even, I mean, it seems like a pretty far way off at this point, right?
I don't know off the top of my head, because I know they talked about it a little bit more. I forget if it's supposed to come out later this year, in 2024, I should say.
Interesting. I would like to reprise my role as Kaya. Just putting it out there.
And don't get me started on like voice cast, just in both Japan and for the English speaking audience. I don't know what they're gonna do. So
actually, I shouldn't want to be Kaya. I want to be a bigger role this time.
That's true.
Just
yeah,
saying.
aim for the stars. Yeah.
Well, our awesome guest David Moo has entered our Zoom waiting room, so we will be back in a moment. Our guest today is David Moo. You guys probably know him best from voicing Sanji on the 4Kids dub of One Piece, but he also played a bunch of other roles at 4Kids on shows like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Ninja Turtles, and started off in The Slayers, like so many of our other guests on this podcast.
A ton of Slayers.
Yeah. So welcome to the show, David Moo. I'm excited to hear your origin story.
Okay, well, here we are.
Here we are. So you're somebody that I absolutely knew during those days, but we didn't see each other like a ton. And like, I never sat down and interviewed you then because it would have been awkward.
One of the things that's interesting that my wife was like, well, do you know her? Talking about you earlier today when I was mentioning what my schedule was today. I was like, no, you got to remember, like, none of us knew anybody.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we would happen to meet people as we were coming and going, but like, we didn't hang out because unless we were doing original animation, which
like
happened
Turtles.
Exceedingly rarely, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, we were never in the same room at the same time. There was always doing ADR looping, and so it's always just alone. So
right, unless we went to see someone's band play or like things like that. Like that was how I got to know some of the cast. It wasn't at the studio. It was
totally
like after hours recreational nonsense.
Yeah, which I never did because I always was like working. I was, like bartending or whatever. And so I was always at night. I was always going off to work. Did
you have any funny day jobs during that time? I love to ask people that. Or is it mostly the bar?
Mostly the bar. I mean, at that time, like, I guess when I started out altogether, I was a server, and then I was a bartender. I was also making theater, like all of us, is how we all arrived here, right? So I think for the most part, so I was sometimes I would like rush off to rehearsal, or I would rush off to my bartending job or my waiting tables job, or eventually I was only a bartender, starting by like, I don't know, 98, 99. I was only bartending. And so that's what I was always like having to go off and do. And then also sometimes making theater, but
right.
Yeah. So no, not really. I didn't have any like amusing, I wasn't repairing urinals or any of the,
Oh, I'm adding that to your IMDb. Urinal repairman.
Exactly.
It's official now. So you moved, I don't know where you're from actually. Where did you grow up?
I'm from Boston.
Okay, so not too far from New York.
No.
But you moved to New York with stars in your eyes.
Yeah, exactly.
And a nickel in your pocket.
I was in a theater company that was moving to New York with a show that we had booked at La Mama, and so I moved
for those
to
of
New
you who
York.
don't know, La Mama was I don't know if it's still there. Was an experimental theater place where you could go see the strangest stuff in New York City.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was and is. Yes, it's still there. Ellen Stewart died some years ago.
Okay, that was the creative director.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they named one of the major, performance spaces that they control after her. But yeah, anyway, yes, but it still continues on East 4th Street, still there, still making weird shit.
Oh, good. I'm happy it's still there. So how did the voiceover stuff, because so many of us, today kids are like aware that voice acting is a job, whereas you and I probably didn't have it on our radar. How did this all happen? Like, because I believe, and again, I'm going by IMDb, which is, often very incorrect, But the first couple shows I see are Guardian of Darkness, Ping Pong Club, Slayers, which are Central Park Media shows, I believe.
That's right. Exactly. So, I mean, I'm actually an exception. I did know what voiceover was.
Okay.
I had no idea about anything about like character voiceover, which is what you and I ended up, spending our time doing. Although I imagine both of us have also done a little bit of like, non-character, like narrative work or commercial stuff or whatever. But I certainly knew about like narration work, and it was always kind of like, and actually I have to say to this day, one of my great dreams would be to like narrate like nature documentaries. Like I would love to do. So if anybody's listening,
that would be a neat job. I don't think I'd be good at that. I think your voice is much better suited for that.
But there's the point is there's all these other things that our voices can do, right?
Yeah.
So and that's just one of the things that I've always wanted to do, is that specific thing. I would love to do that. And maybe also like historical documentaries or nature documentaries, that kind of thing. Anyway, so I think I even then at whatever age I was at the time, 27 or whatever, I was like, yeah, I would love to do this. But I didn't know anything about character work. Okay, so the answer to your question is that oh man, it's complicated. I was working, I worked in service, and then I took a 2-year hiatus where I worked for this weird little startup company that event, and I won't bore listeners with an explanation of what it was, but it was like this like little tech company that I worked for a short period of time, and we had a client. We landed a client who actually was bringing a product to market, and we were the technical creators and essentially like advisors on this, bringing this product to market. And he, along the way, was going to run some television ads, and so he then would bring us in to be the technical advisors and like sort of like, I guess you would now maybe call like content advisors, although such a term never existed, for the advertising agency. And so as a result of that, I started going to several meetings at this like major advertising agency.
Okay.
And at that meeting, it was discussed, we started discussing the nature of the ad that they were going to produce for us, including the kind of voiceover that it would need. And I think at some point, like I stepped outside with one of the producers to have a cigarette or something like that. And while I was chatting with her, I think I mentioned, which is why I sort of have contradicted you before, because I think I mentioned to her, I was like, oh, I've always kind of been curious about doing voiceover work. And she said, that's interesting. I could certainly put you in touch with some people, trying to be friendly to her client, essentially, like with some people who could maybe like audition you for that. And I think I went out on like one commercial audition and it really didn't go well. And I went out on one character cartoon voiceover audition, which ended up being for, I think, Guardian of Darkness.
Okay.
And for that guy whose name I can't remember at Central Park Media, who's a very nice guy. And what are the chances that I went out on this audition, and 2 days later I received a telephone call saying, yes, we'd like to book you to play this character in this direct to video Japanese anime import movie or whatever Guardian of Darkness is. And so that's what happened. And as a result of that, I was put, like you and like all the rest of us, I think is basically how it worked for all of us. I was put on his list of actors to call.
Yeah.
And so forevermore, whenever Central Park Media was doing like a casting, I would, and there were, like deep voicemail roles available, and sometimes not even deep voicemail roles, like in Slayers. I was not doing a deep voice in that, like whatever. I would get called in for an audition, and, so every month or two or whatever, someone would call me. And then as that industry metastasized, other producers who had been, like getting their friends, like, hey man, can you just give me your audition list, or like whatever,
right?
They would call us up also. And then I would show up at various people's other auditions, and that's it. That's the whole story.
Yeah. What did you think of the dubbing process itself? Because when when I thought of like, oh, I'm going to do cartoon work, I didn't think of the tediousness of dubbing and the process of dubbing.
Absolutely. Well, that's the thing is like people ask all the time about it. They would, be like, that's so cool. You get to act in these cartoons. And it's like, yeah. I mean, because at first it was learning how to act in the context of doing this highly technical skill. And then later on, the technical skill was a little bit more sort of like natural, and also the technology had gotten better so that they could mess around with it to make it easier for us. I guess, that's the learning curve. The learning curve was figuring that out. I mean, what did I think of it? I mean, it's hard because as I would explain to my friends, it's like, it's not exactly an acting job in the sense that you would understand it. I don't go into the studio and emote. I do have to find those performances in there, but largely what I'm doing is this highly technical skill called hitting the flap. And I would then have to explain to my friends what it means to hit the flap. Something that you immediately understand.
Crazy.
So,
I mean, it goes against almost all of our acting training. Like it's so non-intuitive to like what you think an actor does. But when it's done well, it's so satisfying because you're like, I showed the emotion and I hit the flap.
Exactly.
This episode is brought to you by AWS. Amazon Q Business is the new generative AI assistant from AWS. Many tasks can make business slow, like wading through mud. Help! Luckily, there's a faster, easier, less messy choice. Amazon Q can securely understand your business data to help you streamline tasks, like summarizing quarterly results or doing complex analyses in no time. Q got this. Learn what Amazon Q Business can do for you at aws.com/learn more.
Okay, I have to tell you, I was just looking on eBay where I go for all kinds of things I love, and there it was.
That hologram trading card. One of the rarest, the last one I needed for my set. Shiny like the
designer handbag of my dreams. One of a kind. eBay had it, and now everyone's asking, ooh, where'd you get your
windshield wipers? eBay has all the parts that fit my car. No more annoying. Just beautiful.
Whatever you love, find it on eBay. eBay. Things people love.
Looking for a pickup truck to get just about anything done? Look no further. The Chevy Silverado EV isn't just the most powerful Silverado ever, with next-level towing capability and technology. It also offers game-changing versatility with the available multi-flex midgate and tailgate, which means Silverado EV helps you carry large, bulky, and oddly shaped items up to nearly 11 feet in length. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive. Visit Chevrolet.com to learn more.
And then there's the other aspects to it, which is that as they get to trust you because you've worked with these producers and these directors over and over and over again, you start, because all flap hitting, as you know, involves rewrites on the fly, because someone has been paid to like go through and try to come up with translations that are reasonably timed to the size, but that they don't, the mouth or the timing of the way that the character truly in the original Japanese audio actually said those words or whatever. And so you and I in the studio are then making little adjustments. Well, it would be better if we reversed these words, or what about this synonym instead, or whatever. And so so it's not just hitting the flap, it's also doing rewrites on the fly that also are things that are maybe also kind of fine-tuned, like their ways of also then fine-tuning the performance itself. Right. So they are all kind of working together. And you're right. Like sometimes it's super frustrating because you're like, well, we just got to move on. That wasn't great. But sometimes when you hit it, when it all comes together and it really looks like the character's really saying those words and your performance sounds good to you, that is very satisfying.
Yeah, like I've rewatched I don't like to watch myself, but I've rewatched little clips of things recently, and I can tell when it sounds like I'm just trying to hit the flap. And I'm like, oh, if I had one more take, if we'd had lots of time and I could do one more take, that would have been perfect. But now it just sounds like me being technical. And it's frustrating because a lot of these shows live on and you're like, oh, they're all going to hear that shitty performance.
Right. But the thing is, we have to keep in mind, like with so many things, is that the customer is not informed about the technicalities of the way the thing is made, and so they're not going to notice. Like 95% of the time, they're not going to notice.
Right, and it's so funny too. Like I was on Twitter or something today, and as educated as today's anime fans are, like, because they're super educated today about anime, one
Absolutely.
of them, asked a question about working with another person, and I thought, you guys, we've told you like 20,000 times that we didn't record together.
Right.
I don't want to, I'm not going to respond in that way, but
Right.
I want to just be like, we keep telling you this. We never met each other.
But they can't believe it. They just don't understand that, like, yes, that acting in this way does not actually involve ever actually acting against another person's performance directly. It's only indirectly. I mean, I perform against your performance, but only because you happened to be in the studio before me. And much of the time it's the other way around. So
and it sucks. And it's like, that's why there's pickups if you can do them, because you need to sound like you're having a conversation. So it's just, okay. So you're doing some Central Park Media stuff. Again, according to IMDb, it looks like the first thing you might have done at 4Kids was Ultraman Tiga. Do you remember that at all? There's no character name. Again, I know.
No, I remember Ultraman Tiga. I just don't remember exactly what the first thing was. I think that might be the first thing I booked as a regular character.
Might have been Yu-Gi-Oh!
But the first.
Oh, Yu-Gi-Oh! Could have been.
Or maybe it was Yu-Gi-Oh! It's possible it was Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah, see, I don't know. See, that's where my memory is definitely going to be fuzzy, is that I'm not going to remember the order of all of it.
Totally fine. Do you remember who you played on Ultraman by any chance?
I will say the first time I went to 4Kids, I think, was to audition as the voice of the computer on Pokémon.
Oh, interesting.
A role that I almost got.
Oh.
And I think may have even aired with my voice in it as an episode at some point. I'm not sure.
That's such a 4Kids story. Like, they've replaced everybody very haphazardly.
Right. Yeah. So I think so that was a thing that happened. But then as a result of that, yes, they then started calling me for auditions. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any recollection, and I don't expect you to, of who you played on Ultraman Tiga?
Oh, no, of course. I know. I remember. I not just any recollection. I remember exactly who I played on Ultraman Tiga.
Tell us.
And then I remember the voice, the whole thing. But yeah, of course.
We're making history.
Ultraman.
It's not on IMDb.
Oh, so it just says that I was in that show, but it won't say who I was.
But now I'm writing it down.
That's the fault of the credits on most of those dubs.
Well, there you go. If you can correct it, that would be great.
Okay,
yes.
So lay it on us. Tell us.
I played somebody called Commander Munakata.
Okay.
So he was so Ultraman Tiga. All Ultraman has the same kind of thing at the center of the story, but in this particular version of the Ultraman mythos, the guy who is sometimes Ultraman, his alter ego, whose name I can't remember any other characters' names. He is a member of something called the Guts Team, the general universal something, I can't remember. It's like some
tactical
kind of
squad or something
tactical
like
squad,
that.
like global universal tactical squad or something like that. Yeah. So and so all of the members, all the cast members essentially do different things in this tactical squad, and Commander Munakata was the field commander. So there's like someone in charge of the whole team from like in the office, and then when they go out in the field, my character was the person in charge out in the field, the field commander. Munakata.
That's you. Okay, I know exactly who you're talking about now. Yeah. Okay,
were you also in Ultraman?
I did small things in Ultraman, but I found it crazy to try to match lip flap for human beings.
No, it's so hard.
It's so much worse than dubbing anime. Than an animated character.
Getting back to lip flap, and especially, because we now brought it up with respect to humans, like you do kind of have to throw your hands up to a certain extent eventually, So anyway, so that's what I was.
Like the audience kind of has to just give over that it's never going to be perfect and just enjoy and hope. And it gets frustrating working with different directors because I would rather the performance be good than the lip flap be perfect.
I agree.
Everyone has their own preference for that.
Yeah, and you want to balance those as much as you can. But yes, I agree. If one has to take precedence, I agree. The performance should definitely be over the flap. Absolutely. And then there's the other aspect to it, the sort of like, I'm going to say the thing that we shouldn't say in an interview like this, which is that if this all pisses you off, like watch the original. No, I mean, not just don't watch it. Watch the show, but watch the original audio with fucking subtitles.
That's what they're there for.
That's what they're there for.
Yeah.
So if our performances are annoying you, just don't listen to them. Watch the original audio.
Yeah, and especially today when people have these things are easy to access. Like when we came up, there was limited access to all this stuff. Like if you wanted anime, you went to some tiny video store in the East Village. Now people get in 5 seconds whatever they want. So
but even then, a lot of the stuff we were doing was on DVD, and the DVDs would have both tracks available to you. So like if they were watching their favorite anime and they decided to engage in the English dub for whatever reason, and it's annoying them, just turn it off.
Yeah. I totally agree. Okay, so I believe what came next, or around this time, was Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yes.
And you played Panik.
Yeah.
What are your memories of that?
So, I mean, I had a lot of fun. It's a really fun villain. He's a great villain. And he's also, I now know later, all these years later, he was very much remembered and beloved villain on that show that people continue to like ask after. So that's interesting. But what do I actually remember about doing the work for it? What I remember is that it was very, very hard on my voice.
This is a common thread with villains, especially.
Yes. So that role was. They made it. Bless them. They made my voice even more extreme using technology, and that's great because there's no way I could really make it as rough as it is in the but I'm almost in the way that I actually performed it in the original audio that I did. It really is almost there, and that's really, really hard on the voice.
Yeah. Do you remember the audition for? I don't think I auditioned for my role on Yu-Gi-Oh! Do you remember auditioning for that?
No, not particularly. I don't have any particular memory. No. There's also another possibility. Every once in a while, I didn't audition.
Right.
Sometimes they would just call me up. Exactly. They would just be like, "Hey, David, this is a good role for you. Show up on Tuesday." And so I don't know. Yeah.
Crazily enough, I don't see Pokemon on here. Did you ever work on Pokemon?
No, the only work that I ever did on Pokemon was when I was close to being, and maybe was for like a minute, the voice of the computer on Pokemon.
And we'll never really know because it probably was if you at home are listening and you have a voice clip of something you think might be David, send it to us.
Yeah.
But okay, so did you know, I was not aware of this at the time, that they were making all these changes to shows like Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, I didn't know that, like, they had taken the Japanese and made cuts and made it, like, I didn't know that it was more of an adult show originally, and then we were getting all this hate mail. Like, I was blissfully unaware of all of this.
I had no idea about any of that until, and literally, I didn't even know about any of that until this very second when you just told me. But
yeah, okay.
What I will tell you is that I did know that they did that in general, because I used to watch some anime when I was a kid.
Oh, what did you watch?
I watched, like, Star Blazers, and I watched there was this thing on in local Boston television that I think was called Force 5, and it was a different anime 5 days a week. And like if I can remember any of them, one of them was called Danguard Ace, and one of them was called Space Cateers, and one of them, and they were like, I think all maybe made by the same studio in Japan. Anyway, my point about all of that is that I knew back then that they had kind of like chopped and re-edited a lot of those shows. Okay. And so I kind of, when I was doing this way later in the late 90s and early 2000s, I knew that might have been going on, but I didn't, I mean, whatever.
Right. Like, it wasn't until I went to conventions and people started yelling at me,
right,
that I really knew what had happened. I was like, that was not my decision, right?
Right. Well, yes. And I mean, that refrain, "it wasn't my decision," applies to all kinds of things that maybe we'll talk about in this interview.
We will get into, yes. And actually, that does lead us into the next show you did there, called One Piece.
Yeah.
We should put a drum roll in there. Can you, walk us through, I've seen some interviews with you, and whatever you can remember about the audition process, working on it, feel free to have at it.
Wait, sorry, you've seen there was a glitch in the Zoom. It's okay. You've seen interviews with me in which what happened?
Oh, where you just talk about working on One Piece.
Oh, yeah.
So I know that you remember certain things, and I'd love for you to just share with our audience what you recall of the process, finding the voice, interacting later, where that's the show I got yelled at for. So,
right.
I assume we all did, but
I got yelled at a little bit for One Piece. I got yelled at more for Slayers, which we can go back to talking about later.
Really?
But
I haven't gotten yelled at for that.
No,
we'll definitely go back to that.
I got yelled at a lot for Slayers in ways that were hilarious, some of them. But anyway, yes, regarding One Piece, yes, I definitely got yelled at for that. I mean, yes, sure. Here's I'll give you the generic rundown. I mean, that's something you, Tara, already know, but for the listeners, the way that it works is this. We go into a studio for an audition, and there are sides that have been prepared for us.
Sides is a script.
Right. Yeah. So sides is like a little bit of a script, right? A tiny little bit of a script. Something that the producer has presumably thought is emblematic of the performance that they're looking for. Something that, like whatever. So some little excerpt of the language that they want you to say so they can figure out if you're a good performance. Okay. So that's that. That's what a side is. We go in, we get sides and a character description. And if you're lucky, you might also get an image. So there might be like a little thumbnail of a picture of the character, but not always. And then like the name of the character and some kind of basic description, like bad guy, early 30s, whatever. Maybe something about the kind of voice they're looking for, maybe not, right? Mm-hmm. And then there'll be like a little bit of dialogue for you to say, okay, now, you're also auditioning for multiple roles usually, right? So you'll be like, okay, Tara, you're good for Erica and for Luna and for whatever. And then you look you look at these characters, and then you have like 4 minutes sitting on the sofa outside outside the booth, and then you go inside, and then you come up with those you just like make up voices for those performances.
Yep.
and then you shake their hand, and they say good to see you, and then you may or may not receive a telephone call the following day or the following week, whatever. Anyway, okay, so all I know regarding Sanji in One Piece is that I was told that he's a cook, and that he should have a kind of like Brooklyn urban accent. And that he was like, and that there's something kind of sort of, I can't remember, but like I don't even remember a lot more.
There were some adjectives on there.
There's some adjectives on there, exactly. And that's it. And so based on that, I did that voice. That's right. Slightly, like sort of like stuffy nose, kind of Brooklyn accent. Now, I would like to point out that one of the things that I was yelled at is like, on the internet, they're like, is he from Boston? Is he from Brooklyn? Is he from, like whatever? And
he's from the Northeast. He's from the
Northeast. He's from the Northeast. Like it's a seafaring fantasy, kids. Like, who cares?
Well, and also that wasn't you that started that. And you saw that New York or whatever Brooklyn thing and trusted that whoever wrote this script for you knew something you didn't.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. What, Steve?
I should also ask, because, it was just mentioned before. Now, did this audition include images of the character? Do you recall?
Oh, that I cannot possibly say. Although I will say that 4Kids was generally better about showing us images than some of the other studios. Mm-hmm. They were eventually like 4Kids was the premier anime studio in the country at that time, and so they had the like money and organizational ability, wherewithal to like have nicer stuff. So
Right. I mean, gosh, the fact that you even remember that they had more images than other, I don't remember anything. So I'm impressed that you have any memory of any of this. Yeah. Okay. So Erica Schroeder had to do a whole voice session with, I believe, the Japanese team and these directors where she like figured out Luffy's laugh. Like, did you have anything like that? Because I never experienced anything like that at 4Kids.
Yeah, a little bit. There was a couple moments, like, okay, for instance, like, I mean, and I'm not sure I actually ever like worked it out with them, but for instance, as the voice that I did for Commander Munakata was really hard on the mixing engineers to get right in the mix because of the amount of dust that I was doing in my voice, because that was the character voice that I had kind of decided on, was like this really dusty voice, right? It's this kind of dust, super like slightly gravelier, but also really dusty voice that I would do, right? So because of that, it was hard to get the correct levels in the mix, and so sometimes we would kind of work on ways of having, sort of more vocal projection through the dust, like whatever, so things like that, but not a lot though.
When you're on the go and it's time to refresh your energy, grab an ice-cold Celsius Arctic Vibe, where 0 sugar, 7 essential vitamins, and proven ingredients meet the pure refreshment of frozen berry. Unlike traditional energy drinks, each sip of Celsius is a perfect balance of flavor and function. So whether you're hitting the gym, the office, or your next adventure, grab an Arctic Vibe at your local retailer or visit Celsius.com to learn more.
With Uber Reserve, good things come to those who plan ahead. Family vacay? Reserve your ride as soon as you book your flights. To all the planners, now you can reserve your Uber ride up to 90 days in advance. See Uber app for details.
So, working on One Piece, do you remember any thoughts about the show itself? Did you ever realize that this show had we interviewed Norman, who said this was a show that was made for adults that we probably shouldn't have made for children. Again, I was unaware. Did you notice anything? Do you remember if it was enjoyable, or if you were like, hey, that's odd, like that's a lollipop, not a cigarette, or
Right. No, I mean, that's the thing, is like, I knew, because they had so you've already spoken to the one thing that I definitely knew, which is my character always had a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. And so, and I went in to do the voiceover before they had rotoscoped the cigarette into a lollipop.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so, so I knew in every session and we established that early on. They're like, yeah, they're going to take that out, like whatever. So before any of that aired, I was fully aware that was going to happen, but I never had identified that as something that was about it being for kids versus adults. I had identified that as being something that like certain standards and practices are okay in Japan that are not okay in the US.
Right. Which is part of it too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. So that was that. But now that I think about it, it's true. Like there's also some like weird shit going on in One Piece. But part of that is also just that like the storylines in Japanese storylines as a general matter are a little loopier and a little bit less narratively constructed in the way that they are here, as far as I can tell. I can't exactly explain what I mean by that.
Yeah, Steve,
the storytelling is different.
Grasp of that than we do?
I'm curious to pick your thoughts on that. Do you mean like, is there less showing than telling? Because I know in terms of like a lot of like, English dubs targets towards younger audience, they would tend to fill more quieter scenes with excess dialogue. Like, if a character off screen is all of a sudden talking, I think my observation from like things that are cut from like 4Kids dubs, not just One Piece, but I think like a lot of slower moments, a lot of kind of like setting the tone, that stuff is kind of quickly phased out, and things that are kind of left to be implied or for the the viewer to come to a conclusion on, I think is a little more stated upfront in animation for a younger audience in the States.
They dumb it down for Americans almost, it feels like.
That's
the Japanese
that's a more blunt way of saying it, possibly.
I mean, it feels like the Japanese trust their audience to be okay with the slower scenes, to figure some things out for themselves.
Or just not explain anything.
I just also think that, like, you know, things are plotted in like an American film, for instance. Things are plotted in this kind of like A to B to C way, and every once in a while, a plot takes a left-hand turn, but they usually take pains to make it like to hold the audience's hand as to how that left-hand turn came around. And if they skip C and go straight from B to D, then that's often considered a kind of narrative problem in the way that American audiences respond to the thing we're talking about. But I feel like watching Japanese products, movies, and especially long-form television shows like One Piece or whatever, I feel like they take all these crazy turns all the time. There's these like really nutty things just kind of happen more as a matter of course. And so it makes it a little bit weirder to understand, I think, it's just a different approach to narrative.
And you were saying, though, you don't remember there being an image of Sanji with
audition sheet,
the auditions.
No.
Yes.
No.
So when you booked the role, you came in and you start, and of course you start doing your lines. What was your first reaction to this character?
I mean, I really like that character. He's like a. I mean, that's the cool thing about that character is that he's drawn, and his surface of his character and the way that I voiced it, and I think the way that it was originally voiced, is that he's supposed to sound like a kind of like urban tough, right? And so like that's the sort of like sound. He's supposed to sound like a little bit like a little bit gangster, a little bit sort of like, somebody you might find in like a gambling hall, like that kind of thing. Like that's what they're looking for on the surface. But then as soon as you scratch the surface of that, even just a little bit, he's actually like an incredible dreamer. Like that's actually who he is. Mm-hmm. And so like he's just full of this huge dream that basically dominates his entire inner life, right? I find that to be, it's like this beautiful. He's a kind of a beautiful character in that way.
You also worked on the games for One Piece. What was the difference in the approach? I mean, I know stylistically games are just recorded completely differently. What was your experience with the game?
That's the only game I've ever done. My guess is that the process of doing so is probably exceedingly similar to all the other games, because you're trying to create. I mean, that's forked logic narrative, right? And so you're trying to account for all possible situations as the player moves through the world. It's fascinating. I mean, honestly, like in a certain sense, it's easier than doing, actual, ADR loop anime, because I'm not trying to hit anything. I'm just doing a performance in size and 72 oofs and say my signature line like this way and then that way, so that it's like in the middle of a scene version and an end of the scene, like whatever. That's blah, 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 blah. So it's a little tiresome. I will say, not to put too fine a point on it or to be exceedingly gauche, that work, the recording of the One Piece video game, sent me on vacation for like a month. So that's great. That's the first I'm hearing, because we talk a lot about how we could not take vacations based on what we were paid. So I'm glad to hear that you had enough work. That's correct. Well, no, it's not that I had enough work in general, but that particular thing was like
for that specific
for that
project.
one thing. They paid us really, really well to do this, and so I then with that cash in the bank, I went to China for like 3 weeks or something.
Oh,
and
I love that.
Yeah, and visited a friend and, like whatever. Anyway, so.
Oh, I'm not in that game, and now I wish I had been. I'm very bitter suddenly.
Sorry.
The next thing I believe you worked on was Ninja Turtles.
Yes, that's true. Although I didn't do a lot in Ninja Turtles. It's kind of like Yu-Gi-Oh! I played one character in several episodes.
Okay, so according to IMDb, Admin Wizard, I don't know what that means, and Faraji Ngala
Right. So I don't even know what admin wizard is. I have zero memory of that whatsoever.
Right. Sounds like a very important character.
So, and indeed, because of the way, here's another little thing that you and I can reveal, Tara, is that often, which you already know, often we would go in to do our like main whatever it is that they were paying us for, but they're paying us by the hour, and so then they would like tack on little bits of work,
right.
Little roles, like do this little role, do this thing, or we need crowd noises, or
like
whatever.
Ngala. Yeah,
exactly. So did
I say the name right? Faraji Ngala? Is that correct? Do you remember if this is
Faraji? Yeah.
Faraji. Okay.
Yeah, I don't no idea what his other part of his name is, but his name is definitely Faraji.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I remember doing Faraji. Absolutely, that was fun because that was like one of the only times that I actually did live, pre-animated voiceover with other actors in the large. In the back of 4Kids was the larger studio, right? Mm-hmm. With the multiple music stands, and I had recorded in that room before, but but that was awesome because we stood back there, like me and three other people or two other or whatever, and like we actually got to act. So.
Yeah, like I remember like the buzz around 4Kids, like everybody wanted to work on Turtles. Like I remember like those were the auditions I kind of got nervous about. I was like, I really want this one. That was like the cool show.
Yeah, I got 3 auditions to play Shredder. And it was not cast. And that to this day, that stands as one of the great professional disappointments.
Yeah, that's a lot of callbacks for 4Kids. Like, yes. I don't feel like they did that.
2 callbacks. Yeah, exactly. Like, no, they did not do that very often. So, anyway, that's the story. But the consolation prize is that I did play this role on the show. So, yeah.
And okay, so you mentioned Slayers, which was not a 4Kids show, but it was the show that so many actors got their start on. So please tell me what you were alluding to before, because I don't think we had the same experience with Slayers.
Oh, well, you were just talking about people yelling at you, and I was just I was just saying that, like I got yelled at because of Zelos, Zelos, mysterious priest. So because of the way that the direction they went with the character. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I did that voice that I just did for you, and it's apparently, I found out later, nothing like the original voice, and I had desecrated this, incredibly important, Slayer's character, and how could I possibly have done it this way, and like all these different things, and it misses this basic point that you apparently have made to your listeners over and over again, which I will just now as a guest make it again, which is we have nothing to do.
Right.
Nothing to do with the choices that are made yes, we have something to do with like the acting choices, and we might have some influence over like the direction a character takes in some limited way over the course of seasons, if we're so lucky as to be in something that has seasons of work to do. But the original intent for the way the voice sounds and the original styling of the character, we have nothing to do with that.
Right.
I showed up in an audition booth and as previously discussed, read a 16-word description of a character and did a voice. And that was, why did I do that voice? I did that voice because that's the voice that fucking popped into my head that day. And then I got cast.
There might have been a guy on the subway that sounded like that. Like, it's like so arbitrary, often how we came up with stuff. Like, and I don't know if this was true for you, but like I was taught, trust your directors, and sometimes they had a lot of information and sometimes they had none. So, I mean, and we're really learning through this podcast, especially with One Piece, the Japanese team was very withholding with information. Like the writers would say, hey, like, can you tell us where this is going? So like if this character is going in this direction, we want to foreshadow or not foreshadow, and they weren't given information. So in some cases it was wonderful. In some cases it was an incredibly frustrating artistic experience for everybody at 4Kids.
Yeah. I mean, because you're forced then to make choices, and then it turns out sometimes those choices are fortuitous, and sometimes it turns out they're tragic, and that's the way it goes.
Right.
And then the fans tell you so. So, But what they have to understand, and what I guess I'm exhorting the fans to understand, is that like, if you don't like our acting, that's totally fair, and that's a totally reasonable thing to respond to. But if you don't like the voice, like the original actual intent of the way that the voice is, don't blame the actor who does the voice. Blame the producer who cast that actor, because
absolutely,
like, if I was cast to do a voice one way, I don't show up at the studio and consider like, well, this may be annoying. I show up and I do the voice that I was cast for. That's what I'm getting paid for.
100%. What, because now we've both talked about our bad interactions with fans, and I don't want people to think that's all it is. What have been some really nice interactions?
No. I'm sorry. I should be clear.
I know you have good ones. That's why I wanted to make sure.
The vast majority, like not just the majority, the vast majority of my interactions with fans over the years have been incredibly positive. And I would also like to say, just to put it to bed, some of the negative interactions that I've had with fans have been some of my most cherished moments in life. One of the greatest things that I have ever seen in my entire life is that there was an entire website around the turn of the century, maybe, I don't remember when, 2002, 2003 or something like that was called davidmoosucks.com. No. And it was an entire website. The URL of which was davidmoosucks.com. And this was one of my most cherished things, was that I could be like, guys, look, you think you want to know whether or not I'm famous? Look at this. It was amazing.
Hilarious.
It was amazing. And they had done, because during Slayers, as we were wrapping up Slayers, we had done these interviews, not unlike this, but it was in person, and I was at whatever studio, and they had come. There was some kind of producer there who had a video camera and did these interviews with the actors, the sort of main and recurring role actors from Slayers. And so I had done this interview. The reason I'm telling you that is that therefore there was visual imagery of me talking, much as there is now, and someone had gone to the trouble of taking out a single frame in which I look, like if anybody talking, if you take out a single frame, they're going to look like crazy, or whatever it is, like, so they took out this single frame, and then that's what's on this website. davidmoosucks.com is a single frame of like whatever. And then when you arrived at the website, you would see this image of me, and then there was a banner at the top that says, David Moo doesn't suck, he blows. And then
they put so much time into
effort into this. It's amazing.
You lived rent-free in their head.
Yes, it's amazing. And then there were all these like death threats on that, David,
that's
like
awful,
whatever.
But okay.
And then the makers of that website then had to, like, in the comments, they were like, please, if David Moo is reading this, please know that we're not actually trying to axe murder you, and all these different things. And I would laugh and laugh and laugh. This was one of the greatest things.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, that's the negative stuff.
Incredible.
And that's the negative stuff, but that as you can see, I actually think is amazing. But no, as far as like the vast majority of things are like fan mail and requests for appearances, which I've never done, and then people showing up. I owned a bar for 16 years, and every once in a while a human being would show up at my bar. One time this guy was in from the Midwest with his parents, and they showed up at my bar one afternoon with things for me to sign. Wow. And his parents were like, it's like our first time in New York. We're going to see a Broadway show tomorrow, but today the most important thing that we had to do was come here with our son here in order to have you sign his VHS tapes.
What is the thing that gets brought up the most? Which so project?
Slayers comes up a lot, but One Piece also comes up quite a lot. Yeah.
So, you want to be a marketer. It's easy. You just have to score a ton of leads and figure out a way to turn them all into customers. Plus, manage a dozen channels, write 1 million blogs, and launch 100 campaigns all at once. When that's done, simply make your socials go viral and bring in record profits. No sweat. Okay, fine. It's a lot of sweat. But with HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools, launching benchmark-breaking campaigns is easier than ever. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
This year, Santa's bringing the power of Energizer into his workshop.
Whoa, the Energizer Bunny's got so much power.
Wait, he's powered up all the toys. I think that means we're done for the year.
I love this bunny.
He's the hardest working helper the North Pole has ever seen. And he wants all your gifts to have the power of the #1 longest lasting AA battery. So this holiday season, stock up on Santa's and the elves' favorite battery, Energizer Ultimate Lithium.
Okay, before we let you go, I have to tell you a really funny story about you.
Okay.
So this was about a year ago, and I did not have your email yet at this time. And you guys should know that, like, hopefully we're like the actors are savvier than maybe you think we are. And sometimes people start fake accounts on like Facebook or the social media to try to meet the actors. So a David Moo kept trying to add me on Facebook, and it was a picture of you, but this David Moo only had like 3 friends, and they all happened to have worked at 4Kids.
Uh-huh.
So I was like, well, I don't know how to get in touch with David, but
that's hilarious.
I'm going to try to get, and like people, some of the 4Kids people said yes without really looking at it.
Which is why this person was friends with those people.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know how to get in touch with David, but I can't let this continue.
Right.
So I wrote to this guy and I said, or girl, I don't know. I'm like, I've reported you to Facebook. Like, I think I reported the page, and I said, I've reported you to Facebook. Please take this down. I know it's not David Moo. So there was some back and forth, and then eventually he said, fine, I'll take it down, but tell me how you know this isn't David Moo. And I said, because David Moo has had like a full life, and his only friends are not 3 people he worked with 25 years ago.
That's true. I mean, and then another thing that belies all of that as well is that I'm not on Facebook. So,
I know. But how sad if after all this time, the only friends you'd made.
Yes, exactly. We're you and Eric and
yeah, totally. So the page is gone. But yeah, so guys, please be a little savvier if you're going to start a fake page for someone.
Get a more interesting hobby. I don't know.
Yeah.
So on that note, tell us what you have been doing since your days doing voiceover work, because I know you've had like a full career since then.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, and I mean, in a certain sense, I had a full career as a voiceover actor. It happens every once in a while still, but no, I've had a completely separate full career in the meantime. I started bartending in 1997 or 98 or whatever, and now I'm now like a 26-year veteran, 27-year whatever veteran cocktail bartender.
Wow.
I opened a bar in 2007, which I ran for 16 years, and I closed almost exactly a year ago, last July.
That's a great run for a bar.
Yeah. So I ran this kind of adorable little neighborhood cocktail bar in Brooklyn, and and now I continue to bartend. I now also, as of the last few months, I have a day job. So that's a first for me. I have a day job for the first time basically since the 90s. So that's the story. But I mean, I also continue to maintain two shifts a week as a bartender.
I bet you're really, really good at it. I would not be, but I could just tell. If you've done it this long, you must be pretty stellar.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I will admit on this podcast, I am a good bartender. Yes.
No, I mean, but it takes a certain type of person. Like, I would suck at it. So, like, I'm impressed with anyone who could do that and have a great, any kind of customer service and skill behind the bar, because it's like the combination of those two things. Are you open to doing appearances? Because you might get asked about that again.
Sure. I would do appearances. The part of the reason, I mean, it's not that I say no, it's just that they don't come at me in the right sort of way, or there have been a couple moments when it might have been possible, but there just wasn't possible logistically. But right. Of course, I would do appearances if they were structured properly, I guess.
Okay, well, it's good to know, because sometimes we get approached for reunions and things like that. So I'll know to throw your name into the mix.
Okay.
David Moo, it was such a pleasure to see you and talk
Absolutely,
to you again.
Tara, it's lovely to see you after all these years.
Yeah. Well, hopefully in person soon, but thank you so much for taking time to talk to us.
No, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
David Moo is a delight, and it's official.
.com.
How.com. I am so glad that he is an evolved enough human to like have a sense of humor about all this. And he did some great work that, again, he was told what to do and he ran with it. And that's what we all did. Yeah.
I think
super nice guy.
It goes for a lot of professions, especially in the creative industry. Film, TV, animation is a lot of us, and you could say this, Tara, and I could say it too. We're not the ones always making creative choices. We're assigned a task. We apply our craft, the best of our abilities, and that's what it is.
That's what it is. But I'm glad we have this Commander Munakata thing. I don't know if it is. I'll look later, but maybe it has been online in other places. But on IMDb, that was definitely not credited for Ultraman Tiga. The other bit of news that I got while we were recording, it's very funny to me because for many years I did not talk about Pokemon. Like I wasn't involved in it. It wasn't part of my life. And now it is a daily basis. And I send my friend Darren Dunstan texts like this. Oh, hi. Were you Combuskin? Or was it Chris Collet? And Darren wrote back, it was Chris. I wonder if maybe I took it over at some point. So he's not sure. So I have to answer whoever online asked me about Combuskin. But I think we should say that it was primarily Chris Collet's role. If it was miscredited somewhere, I will tell that person to fix it. I think it was only wrong on one site. But we're solving mysteries here.
Heard it here first. And I'm glad your friends don't take it personally when a lot of your messages are, did you play this character? It's like, I'm doing, thank you, Tara, I'm doing fine. How are you?
Yeah, I know.
You don't get a response like that.
Well, if we hadn't been texting like for the past few days anyway, like if it was an out of the blue text, I'd be like, sorry to bug you, hope you're well, here's a question. But luckily with like certain friends, I don't have to be like that. Yeah. I can just annoy them with questions that they don't remember the answers to.
And it's not always, that's, I think we're lucky with Darren and Chris too, but like not.
Oh, yeah.
Not everyone.
Not hating me when I bother them with questions.
No, but fans got to realize too, it's like not everyone always remembers every specific detail about a show they worked on. We
were just talking about this. Yeah.
And if we finding a way to incorporate this into our outro, and I understand the I don't know if it's the irony or the
hypocrisy.
Hypocrisy. Thank you. Hypocrisy of being a longtime One Piece fan who's a part of a One Piece podcast. But like with so many of these, with these voiceover roles, or just, anything like me working in animation, it's always just this brief moment in someone's life that's like, it was just in the moment doing this job. And sometimes we just don't think about it afterwards. It's out of our heads. So I think some fans, you can't be too surprised with what, we'll remember and what we don't remember.
Yeah. I mean, I was just telling Steve, like I did a podcast where we had Jason Alexander on as a guest. And I realized, oh my God, I've seen every episode of Seinfeld a million times and I know that show better than he does. He did it. He did that episode once and learned his lines and then forgot them probably. And I've seen, or The Office or whatever show I've seen a zillion times. I can't expect them to remember this the way I do.
Right.
And it's a little, and I get it. It was a little bit heartbreaking for me, but like, it was a great realization because I'm like, but I also then, when fans come up to my table and ask me a question that I don't know the answer to, it reminds me to answer them in the kindest way possible, the way that I would want Jason Alexander, George from Seinfeld, for those of you who don't know who that is, to answer me if he didn't have the answer to my question.
Exactly.
Crazy. But yeah, David Moo was great. I'm bummed I never got to go to his bar.
Same.
But I love that people showed up there. Yeah, I love that.
Zach and I were thinking of doing that for years.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
Zach is our other producer.
Yes. Yeah, in case you didn't know. But I think I'm glad. It sucks that now I will never get the chance, but I think I'm glad I didn't go when I think we talked about it. I think I still had some maturing to do.
Because you were some young assholes who were mad at 4Kids in general.
Yeah, still then.
Yeah.
No, I just thought because I think there's a right way and a wrong way going about talking about it, at least in someone's own, establishment, place of work. I think, with the podcast,
oh God,
be a little more open to conversation, but I wouldn't want to go, I wouldn't want to walk into this person's bar where they're expecting to just have another day of like mixing drinks, making friendly conversation, and not ask something stupid.
I'm so happy to have answers to some of those questions.
Yeah.
But it really is as arbitrary as, like, especially for incidental characters, I'm just making stuff up. And again, sometimes you might not know that incidental character is coming back.
Right.
And the director doesn't know that because they haven't seen that episode yet. And suddenly they're Scottish or whatever it is.
Willing to bet.
And have a lisp. I mean, like, it's bananas the way this whole world works. Again, it is different now. I think we treat things with more reverence, and we do have the advantage of these online wikis for a lot of shows. New animation is different because we're working with the creators a lot of the time. So that's awesome. But yeah, it's a weird industry, man.
Yeah.
Did you like the Facebook story? Still just cracks me up. I think about it all the time.
Because that happens to me too, honestly. Throughout my life, like at that point, I'm so over it now. It's like, oh, I used to believe, oh, well, they're friends with this. I'll tell you the story. I'll tell you the story. I think I remember the day I was done. Because you back then get a friend request and then you see a bunch of mutuals thinking, oh, maybe I've met them before, or maybe there's someone I should get to know. And that sounds kind of dirty networking thing, but I'm like, oh, this has the potential to be up here in my industry or something like that, or at least in my circle of friends. I had no idea who they were. Never. And I don't think I had any interaction, but then I remember I was in a Ralph's, I was doing food shopping, and I saw them. Just like, and this was like, and I'm not saying I was
they had used their real picture.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah, this wasn't a fake. Sorry, this wasn't a. This was actually this is a legit story. Okay. Sorry, but there's so many of those fake accounts. Sorry, I'm aware. I realize this.
Okay.
But I saw them in a Ralph's, and I wouldn't excuse my whole reaction here, but I thought, I'm not gonna say anything. I'm just gonna walk by them a bunch and just see if they recognize me. Mm-hmm. And they didn't. And I thought, I should probably unfriend them.
Yeah,
just because
they
I'm
have
like,
no idea who you are.
I was like, I'm pretty sure I am a stepping stone and not someone they actually seeked,
yeah, that's an unfriend.
Some sort of friendship with. Yeah. So that was the day I'm like, nah, I got to know who you are, or at the very least, or I'll I'll
or at
have
least
some.
You really are who you say you are. Like
that, most of all.
Like the weirdest part to me was, and I won't name names, but like that. So this fake David Moo was friends with a few of my friends who had fallen for it, and I texted them and said, "Hey, listen, that's not David. You should probably, because they can have access then to their personal.
That's the thing, yeah. You know,
and none of them unfriended. None of them took the time to unfriend the fake David Moo, and I thought, well, that's dopey. Like, because this person clearly has a Listen, I know we're not all trolling each other's thing, but this person clearly had a motive to do that.
I don't even want to imagine, but yeah, just access to, personal stuff, and you being able to figure that out, I think is really funny. And I should apply to more things, because you're saying like this guy, has lived a long, long enough life where his only friends aren't people that he may or may not have interacted with on a popular show that
25 years ago.
Yeah. Like you think I would still be like all about like what I was doing 25 years ago? No. It's
right. Well, but this guy should have been smart enough to like add some random things to this page to at least hide it. But when I saw that this person only had 3 friends and they all have, I was like, David would appreciate this, like this sad life of David Moo that in all these years, he's
nobody's
just
making a new Facebook
reconnect.
account in the 2020s.
Oh my God.
If you wanted
so
a Facebook
ridiculous.
account already, you made one. And you got at least a handful of friends, depending on how you want to go about it.
I like that the guy asked me, "How did you know?"
You could
have the balls to ask me.
You could have flipped it. You could have just been like, "Because you just told me."
Right, well, no, he had already kind of admitted it at that point.
Okay,
But he's like, "I'll erase the page." But why do you think that? Oh, he wrote like, "Why do you think this isn't actually David Moo?" So because he definitely has more than 3 friends. You don't run a bar for 16 years.
Right, yeah. And just friends. Like, I'm a bit of a recluse. You know? Yeah, totally. Not much of a people person.
Oh, my God. All right. On that note, David Moo was awesome. Thank you to David Moo.
Yes, thank you so much.
If you've listened to this. Yeah. But yeah, request David Moo at your local convention, and we'll see if we can hook him up with some stuff. But I don't know if he's a social media person. You know, I should have asked him. I don't believe... Maybe he's on Instagram. If he does have social media, I'll put it in the show notes. I should have asked him while he was here, but we were too busy laughing.
Yeah.
So
Giggling.
Thank you guys for listening. Oh, you know what we didn't do? We didn't plug all our stuff. Oh my God, you guys don't stop listening now, because what you're about to hear is going to change your life. Tell them, Steve.
Well, if you you like our show so much, I'm not going to do that the entire time. It's going to be hard to read.
Yeah, just tell them.
Go to our website. That's 4kidsflashback.com with the number 4 in the URL. That's where you can listen to every episode, see who we've had on the show, who we have coming on the show, and links to all our social media. We're on like anything possible, mainly Twitter, Instagram. Check us out on there. If you like the show even more than that, and you want to support us and get access to some bonus content and episodes a week early and ad free, go over to patreon.com/4kidsflashback, also with the number 4. Whoop, whoop. And if you throw us a little bit of money, you'll get all that.
You'll get the episodes a week early and ad free. And then there's some bonus content on there. I just put up some stuff. There's some behind the scenes videos. Like we're sort of trying to collect as much as we can. We also have a YouTube channel where you can just see tons of videos and stuff. You can get merch with Steve's logo. That is all in the show notes. Also, we have some autographs for charity, also in the show notes on eBay, where the money goes directly from eBay to different charities, 100% of it. And on that note, we will
catch you next time.
4Kids Flashback is a production of Maji Media, hosted by Tara Sands and Steve Yurko.
Producers are Zach Logan, Tara Sands, and Steve Yurko.
For more information, go to 4kidsflashback.com. That is the number 4. And if you worked at 4Kids and have a story you want to share, please email us at 4kidsflashback@gmail.com.
You can find us on social media at 4kidsflashback, and to listen early and ad-free, head to patreon.com/4kidsflashback. For podcast merchandise, find links on our website and Linktree.
As they say on every podcast, if you liked this show, please subscribe, rate, and review, and tell your friends, or 4. If you want to check out other Maji Media podcasts, go to maji.media. Thanks for listening.